One of the biggest presentations, one of the plenary sessions today was the ECHELON-1 trial, which uses Brentuximab. Whether Brentuximab's an immunotherapy is a little bit controversial, but it's an anti-CD30 immunoconjugate, which we can use in the relapsed refractory arena in Hodgkin lymphoma. But we've been hotly awaiting the results of ECHELON-1 trial, which takes this antibody-drug conjugate into the first-line treatment of Hodgkin lymphoma. The trial itself was a very straightforward trial. It took patients with advanced stage classical Hodgkin lymphoma, so stage 3 or stage 4, and it randomized them on a 1-to-1 basis between ABVD, 6 courses, which is regarded as the standard of care, compared with AVD, so dropping out the Bleomycin, but adding in the Brentuximab vedotin, again for 6 months of treatment. Now what we saw was an improvement in the modified progression-free survival, and it's very important to say that it's a modified progression-free survival, and that's generated a lot of discussion around that endpoint being used in trials, but the improvement was around 5%, so it was 77% 2-year modified PFS for ABVD, 82% modified PFS for the AVD Brentuximab. The issue that modified PFS brings up is that PFS as an endpoint is easy, it's progression or death, counts as an endpoint. The modified bit, so it still includes progression or death, but if patients failed to reach a complete remission at the end of treatment and then had subsequent treatment at the discretion of the investigator, that also counted as an event. The problem with that is this trial wasn't blinded, so investigators did know which arm the patients were on, as did the patients, and so there could be inherent bias that if you've got a patient with an incomplete response at the end of treatment, investigators may be more disposed to give alternative treatment if they knew they were on the standard arm. I mean, it's an unknown, but it does introduce a little bit of uncertainty into that endpoint. In addition to that, there were some deaths on the ABVD arm, mainly due to Bleomycin lung. Now in the UK and in many parts of the world now, we routinely omit Bleomycin from courses 3 to 6 if the PET scan's negative, based on the UK-led RATTLE study. So actually we don't use now 6 courses of ABVD, and the Bleomycin lung rate has fallen as a result. And also, 10% of the patients were over 65, and standard of care, certainly in the UK, is really not to give full course Bleomycin to older patients with Hodgkin's. So there are certain things which may be biasing against the ABVD in that study. So quite whether this is going to be the new standard of care globally, I think, is up for debate, and that leaves out the issue, of course, of cost. All of these new drugs are very expensive. ABVD is really quite cheap, so whether there's going to be a cost-effective benefit with adding in this drug, to be honest, I doubt it, but that's yet to be sort of fully chewed over and churned over. So interesting data, provocative data, but perhaps not quite clear how it's going to translate into clinical practice.